Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
The number one thing that contributes to customer loyalty is emotions. So move onward and upward faster by gaining significantly deeper insight and understanding of your customer journey and personas with emotional intelligence. With your empathy mapping workshop, you'll learn how to evoke and influence the right customer emotions that generate improved customer loyalty and reduce your cost to operate. Get over your emotional hump now by going to empathymapping.com to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because the person that I have on the show today knows how to build a legendary customer experience. Diana Oreck was born and raised in Mexico City, Mexico, along with her younger brother, Paul. Her father was a real estate developer and her mother was a correspondence school owner. Before her father passed away in 2012, her parents had been married 57 years. Growing up in Mexico, her parents had many friends in the hotel business. This inspired Diana to attend hotel school in Switzerland. This led to a decades-long career in customer service. Diana Oreck is now the Executive Vice President, Owner Experience, and reports directly to the NetJets Chairman and Chief Executive Officer. In her role, Diana is responsible for overseeing all customer service functions and ensuring that NetJets provides legendary service with every owner and every travel experience. Diana brings over 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry to her role. Diana joined NetJets from Ritz-Carlton Leadership Center, a corporate university open to the public to provide opportunities to leadership and learning professionals from a variety of industries. Under her leadership, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company was named the best global training company in the world in 2007 as ranked by Training Magazine. Diana was named one of the top 100 people in learning and development by Leadership Excellence Magazine. In May 2010, Diana's case study on Radar On, Antenna Up, fulfilling even the unexpected wishes and needs of customers, was accepted by Cornell University's Hospitality Research Center. The legacy she is proud to leave behind is even when events or people become very difficult, it always pays to be gracious. Diana currently lives in Columbus, Ohio with Chuck, her husband of 25 years, and her miniature schnauzer, Jets. Diana Oreck, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am, Jim. I'm totally ready.
I'm glad you're here. You know, I've given our listeners a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Absolutely. Professionally, my current passion hasn't changed in decades. I'm really fascinated by organizational culture and fabulous service because we're all consumers, Jim. And when we get great service, it's like poetry in motion. It's like a choreographed ballet. And when we don't, it's right out of Stephen King. And I do believe that extending legendary service, it is a true art form. So nothing has changed there. Personally, my passion right now is my puppy Jets, and I always love jazz.
Well, I had the opportunity to see you do a keynote speech at the IQPC Call Center Week Winter in New Orleans. And for me, a lot of the things that you were talking about, for me, I was just like, head nodding. I think I actually might have sprained myself a little bit. But you started talking really about emotional intelligence types of things in order to be able to create that legendary customer experience. And that's what really would draw me to you. And so I chatted with you afterwards and you're like, oh, I can talk about this emotional intelligence stuff all day long.
I could.
But when you start thinking about emotional intelligence and leadership and things like that, what is the most intriguing to you?
The most intriguing to me about service is the way so many companies, Jim, are overthinking it, right? The good news is, at the end of the day, it really comes down to 4 C's, and that's showing care and concern, common sense, and common courtesy. And I am just so intrigued by how many companies find this so difficult. That it's a mystery to me. Because I do think that you can learn how to extend legendary service. And, a lot of people say, well, it costs millions and billions. It really doesn't. Okay, some of it does, right? But looking people in the eye, giving a firm handshake, smiling is a universal language. So that intrigues me.
Well, I mean, and for those that may not be aware, could you kind of give a quick explanation of what is NetJets?
Yes, absolutely. NetJets, we are a private aviation company. If we were commercial, we'd be the fourth largest airline in the world. And we're almost like a timeshare in the sky. Okay, so we sell aircraft to owners on a timeshare basis. We also have a card product. So you can buy a certain amount of hours to fly. So total, we have about 700 aircraft worldwide. Our corporate office in the U.S. is here in Columbus. We have a smaller one in Lisbon, Portugal.
So essentially, you're talking about leasing, time sharing, and ownership and chartering.
Correct, and
jets.
cards, exactly. We don't charter. We just have the fractional and the cards, and we lease.
Okay. So now, of course, we talked about you being from the Ritz-Carlton as well. So I mean, somebody could sit here and say that, if we're talking about Ritz-Carlton, we're talking about NetJets being, your owners are people who are of wealth.
Yes.
I mean, is that required in order to be able to give this service? But you're saying, no, it's simple.
No, I don't think it does. I think you can be in a supermarket and extend legendary service. It is absolutely about connecting with people. I'll give you a great example. I was in a supermarket recently, and I was reading for relaxation. I like to read trash, the National Enquirer. Okay, just boggles the mind. So I'm in the line, and I can't remember the headline, but it was so cool because my cashier, she made a connection with me. Whatever the headline was, she said, "Oh my goodness, isn't that silly?" She could have been just, focused on the machine or whatever. We can all do that. That's creating these emotional connections. This is what's interesting in my world, Jim. Yes, the majority of the people that use NetJets are extremely wealthy, billionaires, millionaires. They don't need anything material from us. They can buy their own aircraft, their own mansion, their own jet. They do want that personal touch. Let me tell you a very funny story. Obviously, when I get called out of a meeting, it's not because one of our owners wants to ask about my health. I know something's gone really bad. So I get called out of a meeting recently, and I'm looking in all of our charts to see, do I have a record of poor service for this lady that I'm about to speak to? I don't. Everything looks great. We've not had issues, mechanicals. Her on-time departure has been fine. And so I pick up the phone and I say, "Good afternoon, Mrs. So-and-so." And she's laughing. She said, "Diana, got you. I made you scared, didn't I?" I said, "Yes. How can I help you?" She said, "Diana, I myself have a new puppy. She's been flying with me for 4 months now, and I was so touched that the pilot took the time to put a blanket on my puppy." Think about that. She gets me out of a meeting to tell me that she was so wowed by this kindness. So I love it. That's why I love service.
Well, I have to presume, and thanks for sharing that story. I have to presume that based on the story that you told, and I also see in your keynote speech, is that you're not really giving people the tools and the support to essentially create a legendary experience per se. And what I mean by that, it's all these little mindful points, these interaction points, call them touch points, whatever you want to call them, that ultimately lead to that outcome.
Correct. And what I am giving is opening people's eyes up to the fact that service is all about psychology. And in service, don't sweat the small stuff does not apply. It is all small stuff. So it's just a different way of looking at things. And so that's what we're giving. Now, we do have what I have created. We have a framework, a culture framework called our 2020 flight plan. And it does give guidance, such as for our owners, us as the staff, we need to see ourselves through the lens of the owners, right? Through the eyes of our owners. And some of the tactics to get there are things like provide on-time performance, make each travel experience special and personalized, attract and retain owners. So we do teach the how-tos under those buckets, but it really it just is about common courtesies. At the end of the day, and any industry can do that.
What you were just explaining. I see where a lot of organizations kind of struggle with, the whole process piece.
Yeah.
And the ability for individuals to do some creative thinking.
Yeah. I would like to say this to your audience, Jim. There is a misconception out there, okay? Most people think that it's just all about giving the great service. That's only part of the equation. You have to have something called the systems behind the smiles. Your company has to have robust systems and processes that your employees can rely upon to deliver your brand promise, whatever your brand promise is. And that gets overlooked a lot.
Well, and when I start thinking about a lot of the folks that are in the workforce and the educational process that all of us have gone through,
yes,
is that the whole creative thinking element inside of us is actually squashed, and there's research that has proven it over and over. Is that we're more creative?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, well, and so when you start thinking about some of the process behind, the smiles, and I totally agree with you, having that framework and that support system so that people can have trust in what they're doing is important. But how do we keep them from not being so process driven that they forget the mindfulness piece, the emotional intelligence piece, the small stuff that's really going to make ultimately that fantastic and legendary service experience?
Well, this is where we've come full circle. We started our conversation around emotional intelligence. And the reality is this, Jim. I am not convinced that you can be a good service provider without having empathy as a human being. You've got to be able to do this, see yourselves through the eyes of your customers, patients, owners, members. So that's where it gets very difficult. You've got to have empathy.
So for me, there's two things there. First of all, I have to screen for people who have that, ability,
yes,
that aptitude, if you even want to call it
yes,
that, so that they, that we can actually develop that competency even further. But then we also have, especially when I start thinking about your industry and what you're doing, I mean, we don't have a huge abundance of people who can fly, right?
No, it's a tiny, tiny market.
Right. So
tiny market.
I've got to work with what I have as far as my human workforce. So how do you go about actually getting those people to develop those emotional intelligence skills? Because we know they can be developed.
Yes. So look, the reality is this. I will give you an umbrella statement. In my opinion, when I look at the selection process in companies and the training processes, think of $1. I would always say put 90 cents towards your selection process and 10 cents towards training, because you nailed it. If you can bring the right people into your organization that have it in their DNA, that have the service heart, you're way ahead of the game. Now, there are many companies out there that do this behavioral selection process, okay, where they are looking to see if you've got a service heart. So it can be done. It's costly, though. Not every company can afford that. So let's pretend you can't do that. then you can role model empathy. You can teach empathy. You can teach the 5 components of emotional intelligence, right? So that is self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, motivation, and social skills. So what I would have to say is you have to make sure that your department heads and your managers are walking the talk and are teaching these elements.
Well, definitely. So for me, as I've learned over the course of my years, and they say the good Lord doesn't give us youth and wisdom at the same time.
No, they don't. No, he doesn't.
So so for me, I've seen that a lot of the things that we're talking about here has to do with being in forefront of mind, having to be primary and not secondary or tertiary or not even, on the plate. And so I think that's where what I see is that where your systems piece comes into play, is that
correct.
The systems helps folks keep it in the forefront of their mind.
Correct. And this is why, and this is what's interesting too. And a great big shout out to Ritz-Carlton, because I spent many, 12 very happy years there. And they are just phenomenal on the culture piece. And they keep it top of mind because they align back to their culture every single day, 24/7, okay? And they rotate through and they don't spend hours talking about it. They do something called the lineup, where they're every day in every department, and they're aligning back to one piece of the culture. So you're right. You've got to keep it top of mind, because most companies have vision, mission stuff, but it's often just a piece of paper with a gold frame, right? The employees aren't living it every day. Culture and service is not a once and done. You don't get to teach it once and not constantly reinforce. You've got to reinforce it.
You kind of really have uncovered the issue with others and why they can't deliver this type of service is because their focus is on, hey, we have to cut. We have to, become more lean.
Correct.
Or their focus is on, hey, we've got to meet our numbers.
Correct.
Or you got to meet your numbers.
I will say this, and having studied it for over 30 years, you cannot give great service if you're not appropriately staffed. I'm not saying overstaffed, appropriately staffed.
There is such thing as being too lean.
Yeah, you cut into the muscle, right?
Absolutely. I just saw a piece on my local news, which was talking about our National Weather Service here in the States and saying how they're understaffed by 160 positions. So, okay, I can imagine from your industry, that's frightening.
Oh, terrifying. So right. And again, in our world, plus the fact we couldn't do that because we're all about safety, as you can imagine, and we would never jeopardize safety. We can't.
Right. But the too lean thing can have, far-reaching impacts. Now, all of what we're talking about, legendary experience, not providing with that, or even an adequate one, there's a lot of emotion associated with that. And on the show, we look at quotes in order to help us focus. Is there a quote that you can share?
This is my favorite quote, and I don't know if it's a Diana quote or it's anonymous or where I got it. And it is, I love drama, but only in the theater. Okay, I cannot stand it when managers create psychic turbulence for their employees. I also don't like it in the past when bosses I've had created psychic turbulence for me. Because when you are worried and your mind your head's not screwed on right, you're not concentrating, Jim, on delivering the service. So keep the drama down. Let's just try to have no drama, please.
That's a really good point, because there's studies associated with that whole, fear and drama and stress and tension, and how, of course, we know that it's going to impact your emotional intelligence because you're not really being mindful and in the moment. But they also have revealed that it impacts people's IQ. They just can't think well.
No, right. And what happens is they get paralyzed. So no, that I live by that one every day, and all the people I've led over the years know that about me.
I had the opportunity to look at a quick video where you were still with Ritz-Carlton, and you were explaining how the whole forefront of mind in the communication process, and all of those ladies and gentlemen are meeting in the morning, and they're talking about some of these really values that are part of the organization. And then you said one thing to me that was really important, is that you said then all the managers take it and localize it. Yes. Now, your background and your experience, living and being exposed to multiple cultures, I think gives you an experience and an insight into the localization and relevancy piece that others just don't have an opportunity to obtain.
Correct.
Now, with that, there's also a lot of humps that we have to get over.
Yes, there are.
Yes. So is there a time where you've gotten over the hump and it really made you a better person that you can share?
I can, and it's an interesting one. Being a type A person, this happened, it's been about 7 years now. But what happened to me, Jim, is I was not sleeping enough. I got to a place where I was so obsessed with work that maybe for long periods of time, I'd be getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night in a very stressful environment. Well, what happened is ultimately my body started to shut down through dehydration, lack of sleep. I ended up in the hospital for about 5 days, and it changed my entire life, because one thing that I will not do today is I never get less than 8 hours of sleep. And I've got to tell you, it's changed my whole life. Now, getting more sleep doesn't mean that you're not going to have all these issues and dramas to deal with, but it absolutely changes your outlook, your problem solving. So I'll be candid with you. It scared me very badly.
Wow. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a conversation that I even have, with in my own home, with my superwoman wife, other than her having to be in the hospital, which she has been in for other reasons, which I think are lack of sleep and stress related. How can one, because I think the fear is, how can I still be productive? How can I still get my job done? How can I do all those things and not essentially burn the candle at both ends?
Yeah. Something, I am a great believer, Jim, that in self-reflection. And I really do believe there are no perfect human beings. We're just all frail human beings with different frailties. Now, I think you need to be very comfortable in your own skin, right? And say, look, I'm doing the best I can with the tools I have. But self-reflection is important. I used to do a lot of work with hospitals and doctors at Ritz-Carlton. And I was working with a doctor, and he said to me one day, Diana, people are like batteries. You either recharge them or you have to throw them out. And so now I'm careful. And the sleep thing, honestly, it's the biggest change I've made in my life.
Okay. So I can only imagine going through that transition process. Of course, you had the scare, which I'm glad you made it through it. Is that, you had to do some things a little bit differently, maybe even dramatically differently than you had done prior.
Yeah.
What are some of those things that come to mind that you actually did?
Well, this is exactly, and it's a great lead in. So this is what changed. I used to have terrible problems in delegating. And that, I've learned to do that well. I've learned to surround myself with awesome talent, and then you've got to hold them accountable, but delegate. And someone that I was leading some years back said to me, Diana, I don't feel, when you don't delegate to me, it makes me feel that you don't trust me. It was totally the opposite. That was the light bulb. Get yourself good people around you and then hold them accountable.
I think that's a really good point. We often talk, and I have the opportunity to interview a lot of folks in a couple different disciplines. And, there's a lot of people who have written books on leadership. And I think of just about every single one of them, there's some element of trust associated with it. But I think what people, and including myself, forget is that, foremost, you have to give it in order to receive it.
Yes. Absolutely. And and when you're not delegating, unbeknownst to you, you're not developing. And that's how they get that. They're saying exactly that. Gosh, she doesn't trust me. That was an eye-opener for me.
And then that you're going to get that back. They're not going to trust you.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things that, being a father of three that I've always said, and I've shared many of those on the show, but one of them I have not shared in a while is that, I'll say you get what you give.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Especially with kids, I'm like, well, do you want to be loved? Do you want to be shown love? Yes. Well, then you have to give it. Quit being so nasty.
Yes. What is the age range of your children, Jim?
Right now I have 14, 12, and 8.
Oh boy, you're busy.
Oh,
you're
yes.
Very active at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'm trying not to burn that candle at both ends.
That's good.
So I know you've got a lot of things going on. We talked about a couple of passions, including jets. And I know, I even have to ask, and you don't have to share it, but, you went from Ritz and you said you loved it, and now you're with NetJets, and how all that happened is, of course, something you don't need to share. But I know you got a lot of work to do. Before, anything else comes, wherever that may be. And of course, wish you the best. But what are some of your goals?
Well, the great news is this. I loved Ritz-Carlton. I'm over the moon here. We've got, when I look at our flight plan here, I've got about 5 to 8 years of a lot of hard work here in continuing to build our culture, our service. But I'll tell you what, I really, my goal here is to develop people. We've got some fantastic people at all levels here at NetJets. So it really is around that mentorship, that developing, that teaching emotional intelligence. So that's what the goals are. And of course, making sure that our aircraft owners get that very, very nuanced service.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that improves the empathy and emotional intelligence skills in everyone. It provides a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement and provides integrated activities that will improve the leadership and collaboration skills in everyone. This award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and higher-performing employees that have great working relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader listeners. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Diana, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Diana, Oreck, are you ready to hoe down?
I am.
What do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Impatience.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Surround yourself with people that are more brilliant than you and let them go.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I'm very calm under pressure.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Positivity and sense of humor.
What would be one book, and it could be from any genre, that you'd recommend to our listeners?
It is called Managing Transitions, 4th edition, Making the Most of Change by William Bridges.
Okay, Fast Leader listeners, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Diana Oreck. Okay, Diana, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
Learning how to keep things in perspective. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I used to run around pleasing everybody, and everything was a crisis. I'm very good at keeping things in perspective today.
Diana, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Absolutely. The best way to connect with me would be email, DORECK@netjets.com. I'm also on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Diana Oreck, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you, and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.